I mean, I've had conversations with quite smart and well-read people who don't understand that there's like a surface carbon cycle, and then but if you dig stuff up from deep underground and add it to the surface carbon cycle, that fundamentally changes the chemical equilibrium of the surface of the Earth. And they're like, "Wow, really? Yeah, definitely." You know, like there's just conservation of mass is not totally obvious to people. Okay. You know, like you can't just create new carbon from nothing. You have to
and you can't
get it from somewhere.
Just disappear.
Yeah, it doesn't disappear. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, just like basic stuff like that would be like great to educate people on. Having a high bandwidth interface to the brain, like we're currently bandwidth limited. We have a digital tertiary self in the form of our email capabilities, like computers, phones, applications. We're effectively superhuman, but we're extremely bandwidth constrained in that interface between the cortex and your sort of that tertiary digital form of yourself. And helping solve that bandwidth constraint would be, I think, very important for the future as well. Humans are so slow. Yes, exactly. But you know, we already have a situation in our brain where we've got the cortex and the limbic system. And the limbic system is kind of that's the primitive brain. It's kind of like your instincts and whatnot. And then the cortex is the thinking upper part of the brain. Those two seem to work together quite well. Occasionally your cortex and limbic system may disagree, but it generally works pretty well. Generally works pretty well, and it's like rare to find someone who, I've not found someone who wishes to either get rid of their cortex or get rid of their limbic system.
Very true.
Yeah, that's unusual. So I think if we can effectively merge with AI by improving that the neural link between your cortex and your digital extension of yourself, which already, like I said, already exists, just has a bandwidth issue, and then effectively you become an AI-human symbiote, and if that then is widespread with anyone who wants it can have it, then we solve the control problem as well. We don't have to worry about some sort of evil dictator AI, because kind of we are the AI collectively. That seems like the best outcome I can think of. Okay, I mean, I do want to emphasize that this is not really something that I advocate, or this is not prescriptive. This is simply hopefully predictive. Because people sometimes say, well, like this is something that I want to occur, instead of this is something I think that probably is the best of the available alternatives. The best of the available alternatives that I can come up with, and maybe somebody else can come up with a better approach or better outcome, is that we achieve democratization of AI technology, meaning that no one company or small set of individuals has control over advanced AI technology. I think that's very dangerous. It could also get stolen by somebody bad. You know, like some evil dictator of a country could send their intelligence agency to go steal it and gain control. It just becomes a very unstable situation, I think, if you've got any incredibly powerful AI. You just don't know who's going to control that. So it's not as though I think that the risk is that the AI would develop a will of its own right off the bat. I think it's more that's the concern is that someone may use it in a way that is bad. And even if they weren't going to use it in a way that's bad, that somebody could take it from them and use it in a way that's bad.
So when a young man suddenly got, tens of millions and then $1 billion, we were blown away for a while, at least.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. It was kind of exciting.
What did you do with that money? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
what was it like to have a check like that?
Yeah, it was awesome. was great. Yeah, in fact, they mailed a check they sent the check in the mail, which is kind of crazy. I was like, this giant check in the mail. Well, I was with Peter Thiel, one of my co-founders of PayPal. We were actually just driving up Sandy Hill Road. We were going to visit Mike Moritz at Sequoia Capital, and Peter was asked me, like, so what can this car do? Yeah. And then famous last words, I said, watch this. and I floored it and did a lane change, and the back wheels broke loose, and the car spun around. And then we hit the embankment and knocked the car into the air, which continued spinning like a discus, like 3 feet in the air. Bam, landed going the original direction, like it was like in a movie, and blew out the suspension, and like I drove to the side of the road, and I was like, holy cow. That was crazy.
Crazy.
After that, I took driving lessons on the McLaren, because it's like a difficult car to drive.
Are you a very prudent driver nowadays?
I think I'm a fairly prudent driver, yes.
What do you think the odds of the Mars colony are at this point today?
Well, oddly enough, I actually think they're pretty good.
So, like, when can I go?
Okay. At this point, I am certain there is a way. I'm certain that success is one of the possible outcomes for establishing a self-sustaining Mars colony, in fact, a growing Mars colony. I'm certain that that is possible, whereas until maybe a few years ago, I was not sure that success was even one of the possible outcomes. It's a meaningful number of people going to Mars. I think this is potentially something that can be accomplished in about 10 years, maybe sooner, maybe 9 years. I need to make sure that SpaceX doesn't die between now and then, and that I don't die, or if I do die, that someone takes over who will continue that.
You shouldn't go on the first launch.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Actually,
the first launch will be robotic anyway, so.
I want to go, except for that internet latency.
Yeah, the internet latency would be pretty significant. Mars is roughly 12 light minutes from the sun, and Earth is 8 light minutes, so at closest approach, Mars is 4 light minutes away. At furthest approach is 20. A little more, because you can't sort of talk directly through the sun.
Steve Jobs was and is a wonderful Silicon Valley icon. Is he someone that you've admired, and what have you learned from Steve's life and work?
Well, he's certainly someone I've admired. Although I did try to talk to him once at a party, and he was super rude to me. But I don't think it was me. I think it was sort of, par for the course.
I think you weren't the first.
Yeah, not the first. No, it wasn't. Yeah, and I was actually there with, like, Larry Page is an old friend of mine. I've known Larry since before he got venture funding for Google, and Larry was the guy that introduced me to Steve Jobs. So it's not as like I'm going like and tugging on his coat, like, please talk to me. But so I was introduced by Larry Page. It's not bad. So, I mean, he obviously was an incredible guy and made fantastic products. And I don't know, there was like a certain the guy had a certain magic about him. To sort of that was really inspiring. So, I mean, I think that's really great.
Is there that magic that you try and emulate?
No, I think Steve Jobs is way cooler than I am. So,
how do you think about making a decision when everyone tells you this is a crazy idea, or where do you get the internal strength to do that?
Well, first of all, I'd say I actually think I feel fear quite strongly. So it's not as though I just have the absence of fear. I feel it quite strongly. But there are just times when something is important enough, you believe in it enough, that you do it in spite of the fear.
So speaking of important things,
like, people shouldn't think people shouldn't think, well, I feel fear about this and therefore I shouldn't do it. It's normal to feel fear. Like, you'd have to be something mentally wrong if you didn't feel fear.
So you just feel it and let the importance of it drive you to do it anyway?
Yeah, actually, something that can be helpful is fatalism, to some degree. If you just accept the probabilities, then that diminishes fear. When starting SpaceX, I thought the odds of success were less than 10%, and I just accepted that actually probably I would just lose everything. But that maybe would make some progress if we could just move the ball forward. Even if we died, maybe some other company could pick up the baton and keep moving it forward, so that would still do some good. Yeah, same with Tesla. I thought the odds of a car company succeeding were extremely low.
So how much more efficient is your plan then? I mean, what are you going to save the taxpayer who will still have an investment in this?
We're actually more than 10 times the efficiency of what Constellation would have delivered, because the Ares 1 and Orion, Ares 1 rocket and Orion spacecraft would have cost about $400 million per astronaut, per seat to orbit and back.
And you're going to charge NASA, what, $20 million per astronaut?
Right. So we're 20 times less. I think the real question people should be asking is not why was Constellation canceled now, but why wasn't it canceled sooner?
But when you look at your business, it's a really interesting venture here, but it is relatively untested. I mean, we heard from NASA's chief himself, who said he might be more comfortable working with a Boeing, with a Northrop Grumman. Why would a startup like yours really be able to compete in this space? Relatively untested.
Yeah, and I agree with that assessment, and I agree with the administrator. In fact, the opponents of Constellation cancellation have tried to strawman the argument by claiming that the Constellation would be canceled and handed over just to SpaceX, which is actually false. In fact, what will happen is that there will be multiple providers of space transport to orbit, and Boeing and Lockheed will in fact be almost certainly be the largest recipients of that funding. They just won't make quite as much as they would have made under the old program, so that's hence their opposition. I do think there's a good likelihood that SpaceX will be one of those providers, but we will be just one provider among many.
And then when I came out to go to Stanford, that's what I was going to be doing my grad studies on, was working on advanced energy storage technologies for electric cars. And then I put that on hold to start an internet company in '95 because there does seem to be like a time for particular technologies when they're at a steep point in the inflection curve, and I didn't want to do a PhD at Stanford and watch it all happen, and I wasn't entirely certain that the technology I'd be working on would actually succeed. Like you can get a doctorate on many things that ultimately do not have a practical bearing on the world. And I wanted to, I really was just trying to be useful. That's the optimization. It's like, what can I do that would actually be useful?
Do you think people that want to be useful today should get PhDs?
Mostly not.
So what is the best way to be useful?
Some yes, but mostly not.
How should someone figure out how they can be most useful?
Whatever this thing is that you're trying to create, what would be the utility delta compared to the current state of the art times how many people it would affect? So that's why I think having something that makes a big difference but affects a sort of small to moderate number of people is great. As is something that makes even a small difference but affects a vast number of people.
I guess to use the example of SpaceX.
Mm-hmm.
When you made the go decision that you were actually going to do that, this was kind of a very crazy thing at the time.
Very crazy,
very
for sure.
Crazy.
Yeah, people are not shy about saying that. But I kind of agree. I agreed with them that it was quite crazy. Crazy if the objective was to achieve the best risk-adjusted return. Starting a rocket company is insane. But that was not my objective. I'd simply come to the conclusion that if something didn't happen to improve rocket technology, we would be stuck on Earth forever. And the big aerospace companies had just had no interest in radical innovation. All they wanted to do was try to make their old technology slightly better every year, and in fact, sometimes it would actually get worse. And particularly in rockets, it's pretty bad. Like in '69, we were able to go to the moon with the Saturn V, and then the space shuttle could only take people to low Earth orbit, and then the space shuttle retired. I mean, that trend is basically trends to zero. People sometimes think technology just automatically gets better every year, but it actually doesn't. It only gets better if smart people work like crazy to make it better. That's how any technology actually gets better. And by itself, technology, if people don't work on it, actually will decline. I mean, you can look at the history of civilizations, many civilizations, and look at, say, ancient Egypt, where they were able to build these incredible pyramids, and then they basically forgot how to build pyramids. And then even hieroglyphics, they forgot how to read hieroglyphics. So we look at Rome and how they were able to build these incredible roadways and aqueducts and indoor plumbing, and they forgot how to do all of those things.